and welcome to our Elevate Your AppSec program office hours with StackHawk and Snyk. I'm Brian Erickson, Senior Product Manager at StackHawk. And joining me today are Sam Volin, Full Stack Software Engineer, Topher Lamy, Lead Software Engineer, and from Snyk we have Shivam Jindal, Partner Solutions Architect. And today we're embarking on an exciting journey to supercharge your application security program. So picture this. In the world of TV and movies, dynamic duos have always captured our imaginations. Batman and Robin, Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, Mulder and Scully. These pairs combine their unique strengths to overcome challenges and achieve remarkable feats. Now, imagine bringing this powerful concept into the realm of AppSec. That's exactly what we're doing with StackHawk and Snyk. Together, we form an unbeatable team, combining to fortify your applications against the ever-evolving threats of the digital world. So in this session, we're going to cover an intro to Snyk and StackHawk and what makes our platforms better together. We'll get a demo of how this all comes together in the StackHawk platform, and we'll learn about how StackHawk puts DevSecOps into practice. Then we'll uncover some Snyk best practices and wrap up with why we're considered a dynamic duo. So before we get into things, let's kick off with a quick quiz to guess which of these dynamic duos is not like the others. And while you're working on that, somewhere in our slides is a duo that's not so dynamic. Be the first one to spot it and let us know in the chat to win an Amazon gift card. And finally, since this is an office hours, as we go, please ask questions. You can do this through Zoom's Q&A tool or the chat. But if you've got a question related to the topic we're covering, please raise your hand and we'll be happy to pause and answer it right away. This is, after all, for you. Now let me pass it over to Shivam to talk about Snyk.
Everyone, I'll talk a little bit about Snyk and introduce you all to the Snyk developer security platform. So at a high level, Snyk is in the application security space and focused on helping you improve your DevSecOps approach and principles. So Snyk has four scanners in particular. So Snyk code, looking at first-party code that your developers are writing. We look at the source code itself there, as well as looking at the flow of the data to look for any vulnerabilities there. Snyk open source, looking at third-party dependencies and transited dependencies, as well as providing recommendations, upgrade recommendations that developers or teams can implement to improve their open source vulnerabilities or to fix open source vulnerabilities. Snyk container, so looking at the containers or images teams are actually building and looking at vulnerabilities within those images, as well as providing things like a base image upgrade advice that can oftentimes significantly reduce vulnerabilities very quickly. And then Snyk infrastructure as code, that is looking at the infrastructure as code that your teams are writing to deploy cloud resources worldwide. So things like Terraform, CloudFormation, ARM templates, etc., as well as the cloud resources actually deployed as well to provide a holistic approach or view on the cloud resources and how those resources can be built securely in the first place. And then, of course, we also integrate with third-party security data or partner with third-party security data vendors such as StackHawk that provides DAST type of tooling. So we have these different scanners, but on top of it, when we talk about having a developer security or developer first approach to security, it's more than just scanning the applications. It is, of course, working within developer workflows, for example. And so at the bottom here, you can see a couple of different ways that Snyk takes this approach. And ultimately, it is focused on working within the workflows and processes and tools that your teams are already using. So whether that's working directly within GitHub, for example, or Bitbucket or any of the other SCMs that your teams are using, or even going further left than that and working directly within the IDEs or the text editors that developers are often using and acting almost like spell check, but for security, right? So working directly within those IDEs and providing information to developers on one, what are the vulnerabilities? Two, why do they matter? And then three, how can you actually fix those issues? And then, of course, we also integrate with CI/CD tools, so things like Jenkins or Bitbucket pipelines or Circle CI, et cetera. So we can integrate directly there and act like a gate in the pipeline. And then, of course, we also integrate with a lot of different collaboration tools. So Slack and Jira as well are very critical. And we have a neat integration with Jira, for example, where you can immediately see the vulnerabilities associated with the team's projects directly within the Jira project itself. So all of these are focused on not just understanding what are the vulnerabilities, but again, working within the workflows and processes that teams are already using. So teams can understand what are the vulnerabilities, how to prioritize them, and how to remediate it. And that oftentimes provides a lot of value for your teams in improving your DevSecOps approach and being a lot more proactive at security rather than reactive. And of course, the Snyk ASPM kind of layer on top of all of this is focused on helping your AppSec programs actually manage security at a very high level. So they aren't focused. They don't want to focus on what are the vulnerabilities and how do you actually fix a vulnerability. They want to make sure that all of their applications, for example, are being scanned in the first place, and they want to make sure that the correct policies are in place for those applications. And so that's why we have that layer above to help application security teams actually manage the AppSec programs as well. So that's a bit about the Snyk platform.
Awesome. Thanks, Shivam. So now that we've seen how Snyk has you covered from code all the way through to your infrastructure and your dev environments, how do we know these vulnerabilities are actually exploitable in the wild? Well, that can be where dynamic application security testing, or DAST, comes in. So DAST is a way to test your running application from the outside in, similar to how a hacker would be attacking it. We find vulnerabilities from the OWASP top 10, such as cross-site scripting, injection errors, and many more. And DAST is language independent. And StackHawk is really DAST for modern development teams. So it's simple. Just a couple lines of YAML configuration can get you up and running. It's fast. You can rapidly test web apps, APIs, pretty much any kind of web technology, and it's automated. So those tests can be run in your CI/CD with every time code is pushed to your code base. And all this comes together to help developers find, triage, and fix issues before they get to production. So why are DAST and SAST better together? So SAST scans broad code bases. It gives you fixed guidance and really good fixed guidance for developers, but it can be noisy and you don't always know if the findings are actively exploitable. And DAST scans, they reveal vulnerabilities that are discoverable and exploitable in the running application, but they can't really link you directly back to the line of code to fix those vulnerabilities. So that's how DAST and SAST, when we bring those together, it can really give your development team the whole picture. It's the only solution that correlates the findings from both scans on the common CWE ID. So that enables your developers to prioritize the findings that they need to focus on, easily reproduce those, and then quickly find the issue with the line of code. And all that kind of comes together with our developer first guidance to give you detailed remediation and risk information to help you get that issue fixed as fast as possible. So with that, I'm gonna have Topher take over and kind of show you and explain how this works in action in the StackHawk platform. So Topher, take it away.
All right, thanks. So I'm going to show how findings, vulnerabilities show up in StackHawk. that are correlated with Snyk findings. So we can really try and bridge the SAST and DAST worlds here. So before I go into the demo, I want to do this little bit of an overview on the some of the details behind it, because I'm not going to do a full demo. This is kind of a partial demo. But if you think about your application, you have your source code stored in GitHub in a repository, and then you have some sort of deployment process that promotes that, builds it through maybe a test environment, maybe a staging environment, and eventually to production. So if we think about this in terms of SAST and DAST, Snyk, with its static analysis, is going to go look at that source code directly and do its job. So it's going to go try and find things in the static code. StackHawk is DAST, and it needs a running application, like Brian said. So we have a scanner called HawkScan that runs against the instance of the application. And so it will, sorry, I got distracted. It will, so it will run against those instances of the application as part of your build process. So the main thing here is that you have an application in your source code, and then you have environments where it's running, and that's what the scanner is going to hit. So I think next slide. Good. All right, so a couple more things to keep in mind for the demo. So you want to have Snyk code enabled, obviously. You want to install Snyk integration into StackHawk. You want to have apps and ends, sort of figure out how you're going to set that up in StackHawk. And like Brian said, we use a StackHawk.yaml file to sort of drive our scanner. When you're running the scanner, you first start off with just sort of local CLI. It's a local CLI tool. Once you get it sort of set up and established, then you can embed it into your CI/CD pipeline. And then it will run as part of, you can set it up for every merge, every PR kind of, there's a whole bunch of options there. But the key is that it's automated and it's in your pipeline. And then the results, which is really what I'm going to demo here, is kind of, you can look at the scan results. You can, we try and give you as much information as possible about the findings. And then we'll show how that works with Snyk, and you can get to the source code. And then the whole point of all this, of course, is to fix the problem. So that's kind of just things to think about when we're going through this demo. I think we'll go ahead and switch over now from the slides. Oop. Give me a sec. Right. Okay. So here we are in StackHawk. We're going to show correlated Snyk and StackHawk findings. So like in that first slide, we had applications and environments. So here we have in StackHawk, we really organize things by applications. So the very first menu item here, we have applications. Under that, we have scan results. StackHawk can also look at repositories for various other information, not for static analysis. Integrations. So here's where we would have Snyk code. It's already installed in this instance. But if you came here and it wasn't installed, you would go through kind of a wizard to hook it up. It's pretty seamless. And then we have users, and we also have this idea of teams. And this is a test account, so it's, some of its data is realistic, some of it's not. Whoops. All right. Let's see here. Okay. All righty. So what I'm going to demo here is in the billing service. So the billing service has two environments, staging and test. If you think about that first slide where we push the billing code through our staging and test environments, this is kind of what it looks like in StackHawk. So our scanner has run against each one of these environments. You can see some of our results here. If you want to get more detailed, you can go into the scan results themselves. And so here you can see we have some Snyk results for the scan that ran against staging. So we're going to go ahead and dive into there. So this is kind of an overview of the scan, kind of see where we are. We've got some highs, some mediums, some lows. We can rescan if we want to. These are all of the plugins, which are little units that go ahead and test for specific vulnerabilities. So you can see for this one, we tried to do a whole bunch of different types of tests. So buffer overflows, CR, control line feed injection, all kinds of stuff. And then these are the things that the scanner found. So we've got some highs, some mediums, some lows, and then 3 of them are correlated with Snyk findings. And then the last thing over here is just the paths that this was testing. Again, this is test data, so this was just running locally. If we want to go into the specific SQL injection here, we get a nice overview of the scanner found this vulnerability in these URLs with these methods. If we want, we can do stuff like assign or mark status here for them. And then we have the evidence. So here we have the request that we made. So we did a search with this URL encoded parameter. The response we got back. In this case, the scanner found that we got a PL SQL or PSQL exception. So here, this is very nice to figure out exactly what the scanner saw. So this is why the scanner tripped this alert. One thing we can do is we can do this validate, which gives us a curl command, so we can reproduce exactly what the scanner did. Headers. That's because the username for this application is unfortunately named user, so it got redacted. But it's user agent and then the actual request. And then this tab is where the Snyk code integration is. So Snyk has also been looking at this same repository and found vulnerabilities on the SAST side. So this is where the bridge between the DAST and the SAST worlds comes together. So the scanner, the StackHawk scanner found vulnerabilities live against the environment, against the running application. And Snyk code also found the same problem in the source code itself. And so here's some, again, this is a kind of a contrived application, but the idea is each one of these has got source code issues with this vulnerability. And you can go ahead and click here and it will take you into Snyk. It will show you the code. So here is exactly the line of code. So as a software engineer, this is great because you have this is your starting point, probably your ending point, because you should really fix this. But yeah, so this is so you can go into Snyk here and see again in Snyk here. I wanted to show for this project, it's the code, Snyk code. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Here it is, code analysis. So if you go into, this is the project in Snyk. It's got all these things, all these vulnerabilities it found. But then this shows you actually where it was on the DAST side. That was kind of it that I had.
Awesome. Thanks, Topher. Maybe we could take a couple of questions before I move on to our DevSecOps program, and maybe Sam or Topher, these two would be up your alley. The first one is, does StackHawk leverage a HAR file as input into its DAST scanning? Like, I think the follow-on there is, how does it ensure that all the necessary input data for the scanner to progress from page to page?
So HawkScan does not currently leverage HAR files, although that is something that we could be capable of. However, we don't leverage HAR files in part because we want the data to be as live as possible, as well as relevant to the scan. HAR files tend to record HTTP interactions that have taken place in the past, and we want to be sure that when we're testing, we're hitting a live running application.
So the way we discover stuff is you can provide an open API specification, and we can read that. We also have for like traditional web apps, we can the scanner will go through the HTML and look for links and try and do a sitemap of the application that way as well. And then there's a spider as well, right, Sam, for JavaScript stuff? We'll try and spider some of the links, some of the sites.
Yes. By default, HawkScan runs with a default base spider. that will just follow whatever paths that get accumulated and look for links in the HTML. And then we have a separate Ajax spider, which could be used better for single page apps, which looks for links that are dynamically rendered on the page.
And kind of I think related to this, the second question is just does StackHawk provide a way to gauge scan coverage, like how many pages were tested versus how many pages should have been tested?
Yeah, so the paths tab that I showed there is an indicator of that. So that lists out all of basically the URLs that the scanner hit during that run. And that can be a mix of OpenAPI stuff or spidered stuff, or it's basically everything it did.
Yep.
Okay. And maybe last one before we move on, and then we'll answer the rest. There's a couple authentication questions. So just generally, how does StackHawk do authentication, and how many authentication types does StackHawk support for authenticated scanning?
Yeah, that's a great question. So authentication, everyone does authentication just slightly different. There's a lot of sort of best practices out there. So the roundabout answer is StackHawk supports a lot of various authentication mechanisms. So cookies, JWT, even basic auth, all kinds of stuff. So if you go look at our docs, we have a whole section on authentication. So I know it's not a super definitive list, but it's a lot. And it's very flexible, and we have scripting support. So one of the features of our scanner is we have custom scripts where you have really low-level access to what's going on with each request, HTTP parameters, HTTP headers, all this stuff. So you can, we are very good at helping write those scripts, helping people figure out their auth mechanism with those scripts.
Great. Okay, let's keep the questions coming. We love it. We're kind of pick back up towards the end and answer any of the rest of them. But for now, we want to talk about champagning, Snyk, and StackHawk with Sam.
Hey there, folks. I'm Sam Volan. I'm a full stack software engineer here at StackHawk. The process of software engineering, it's changed a lot over the years. 2 decades ago, we had the Agile movement, and that changed how software development is measured and enforced software delivery as a continuous ongoing effort by the business. And about a decade ago, we had the DevOps movement, and that encouraged a change in team culture to enforce the ownership of software and encourage relentless automation and continuous improvement in delivery. And now we're facing a movement of shift left, where the goal is to address the security issues and the bugs earlier in the software development lifecycle. So at StackHawk, we don't just live the shift left movement, we lead it. And we practice scale security, addressing and prioritizing improvements to HawkScan, the StackHawk platform, and the StackHawk API itself. Our engineering is so disciplined, we follow a ritual known at other companies as dogfooding. However, we use a different term. We call this process champagning. At StackHawk, we run HawkScan against the StackHawk API and ensure that we address the findings from HawkScan, and we live the experience we give our customers. It also means that we could test features and product improvements as part of our CI process. We taste the champagne for our real fixes, and we taste the real pain for our sham fixes. So I'm going to talk about how StackHawk succeeds, and in part with Snyk in practice. So really, the secret to our DevSecOps success is just a meeting. And I want to talk about this software engineering practice that we have adopted. And it's called the Weekly Operations Review. And this is a process meeting for our engineers, kind of like a daily stand-up. It's a ritual that we practice weekly, almost first thing on Monday. And the goal of the meeting is for us to use and review our DevOps tooling. Now, I won't lie, it's a pretty acidic meeting and coffee is for sure required, but it starts the week off right. Because this endeavor, it forces the whole team to stare the tech debt in the face and to understand and prioritize new work and to address issues. Not just security issues, but quality issues and process issues in the monitoring tools output. So as a modern software engineering shop, we use and pay for a number of observability and metrics tools. And we employ those on our runtime systems, and we measure for problems in pre-production and code repos. And we'll use tools like Logs.io for monitoring our log ingestion and observability. And we'll use tools like Sentry for capturing errors in our SPA front end, and Argo workflows for managing a large number of scheduled automation. And Grafana and Prometheus are also wonderful tools that we leverage for microservice metrics monitoring. And we have Grafana dashboards set up with all kinds of details for our ongoing traffic monitoring. And yeah, we use Snyk SCA to stay on top of our emerging CVEs and other software dependencies. And we use Snyk SAST as in part for looking for bugs in our front end code. And yeah, at StackHawk, we practice champagning. We run HawkScan against ourselves to ensure that we regularly ship quality software. All right. So admittedly, it took a while after starting the operations review meeting before we found a really nice groove for it, but the efforts have paid dividends. For one, it shared with all the engineers on our team knowledge on how to use our DevOps tools. Front-end engineers can expertly navigate Logs.io and Grafana and find and filter results. Our backend engineers know how to follow Sentry findings and read their stack traces and navigate from UI code to the API code and identify bugs in business logic. And everyone is using Snyk to identify new problems and apply its monitoring to newly created repos. By doing this together as a team, knowledge is shared and defects are triaged sooner. That gives us more time in the week to ship features and make new bugs. We have incorporated this meeting with our on-call rotation. So the responsibility of being on call ends with leading this meeting. And while we didn't start the meetings this way, combining those responsibilities helps reinforce the goal and merits of reviewing the engineering operations together. As part of the meeting, we include our product and engineering managers. They mostly join in for moral support, but they also get a taste of how many problems, new and ongoing, we are facing. And this tells our people and product managers who is accountable to fix, prioritize security or DevOps work, and how much that can influence our roadmap trajectory. The meeting helps reinforce that we are all accountable for the quality of a product, the security of what we deliver. If bugs get to runtime, we all see it, and any engineers are responsible for making the bugs step up and fix it. Because nothing reinforces a shift left mentality better than getting a taste of shift right before your colleagues. It becomes a group learning experience where we can all learn from our mistakes. And importantly, this meeting helps us identify what success is for application security and for team accountability. We find new vulnerabilities every week with Snyk. Our Grafana shows new squiggles every minute. And with Logs.io, we see new exceptions regularly. And because we can measure when things go wrong, we could celebrate when things go right. Because when the ops review meeting started to end earlier, then we knew that we were winning at the game of software engineering. All right. I know it's perhaps fairly arrogant saying that staying on top of your security tools requires the whole team on a regular cadence. I mean, if it was really that easy, why isn't everyone doing it? Well, because traditionally it's been the job of just a few DevOps engineers or security contractors who get to address these issues found on behalf of entire teams of engineers. It's that same waterfall mentality that the Agile movement upended. That thinking that the software just needs to get shipped and that the pen test just needs to get accomplished and a box just needs to get checked. That mentality is toxic and it encourages the communication silos and tribal knowledge that allow petty software bugs to flourish. Changing the culture of security engineering and quality appreciation requires changing the culture of software engineering teams. Everyone has to participate so that they become aligned in the mission of consistently and confidently shipping kick-ass software. Additionally, you want to make it easy for your engineers to access your dev tools and give them full access to those tools. If you're on call and expected to fix a production issue, then you should have access to production DevOps tools. And similarly, having shortcuts and quick links to the meaningful dashboards and tools will help keep this meeting focused so that everyone is not just watching one person fumble through a monitoring tool. And not every software engineer is going to know how to use all these tools perfectly, but using them together and putting different folks in charge of running the show is what has helped us share and reinforce that knowledge. Additionally, you should try and time box this meeting as best you can. Folks have a lot of work to do, so keeping this endeavor tight and respecting people's time ensures that at least every week something enough gets done. And there will always be more security events next week to address. It also helps to have someone who is following along and can make any tickets to address findings in this meeting. It could be a product manager or anyone else who could hold the bug fixer accountable. It keeps the meeting running smoothly and ensures that fixes are bird dog to completion. And yeah, preaching the Boy Scout rule, leaving things better than where you found it, and encouraging fixes where needed helps teams move the needle, improving delivery and operations and product quality. Because security is quality. Snyk and StackHawk are better together, and we're here to help you ship a better product. All right, I'll pass it off to Simon to talk about best practices for adopting Snyk.
Thank you, Sam. I think a lot of what Sam said here will apply to best practices for adopting Snyk, right? It sounds like Sam and the StackHawk team have already figured out a lot of what I'm going to be talking about. But with that being said, let's jump into the next slide. As Sam said, the traditional application security process hasn't really kept up for the new agile way of development, where teams are now, pushing code into production on a weekly, bi-weekly, very fast process, even sometimes daily or hourly basis, right? Very recurring, versus, a lot of teams in the past may have been doing it on a monthly, I've heard even quarterly basis in the past from some teams that I've worked with. And so with this new kind of approach to modern application security development, or modern application development, security needs to keep up with that, right? It can no longer be kind of a reactive approach to it, where it acts as something after the fact. It needs to be a lot more built into the workflows and processes and tools and the overall software development lifecycle that teams are using. And rather than it being built for security experts, it needs to also take into account that developers are often the ones consuming these types of vulnerabilities and having to fix these vulnerabilities. And so as we think about, the challenges that, traditional AppSec has brought and taking it into this dev-first approach, Snyk is focused on a couple of key pillars, right? The first being continuous testing. So integrating in every single way that is possible allows you to quickly and early on identify new ways that vulnerabilities can be added into your application. Being very fix-based. So again, it's not just about knowing all the different vulnerabilities that you have. That's certainly great. It's always good to know what risk you have, but then also knowing how to fix that and making it easy to consume for developers is key there. And then also, of course, having excuse me 1 second here. Getting over a bit of a cough and a sore throat here. Having the holistic cloud native application context is also critical, right? Understanding things such as, when you have this vulnerability, is it actually in a deployed runtime environment, or is it in an archived repo? Things like that can allow you to help give the context on how to prioritize issues is also valuable. And then, of course, having developers as your security champions allows you to, and having developers enjoy the security process and is valuable in terms of making it so that you can have a much more fast approach to security. On the next slide, this one kind of talks through how Snyk can integrate within your modern SDLC, right? So the short version of it, the TLDR version of the story, is you can integrate Snyk everywhere. So you can integrate as early on as within the IDEs that developers are using. So within the text editors, for example. We can also scan within with the Git repository. So we can automatically look at the source code that is there, as well as the applications or the packages and third-party libraries you're using, the containers that you're building, as well as the infrastructure as code there. And we can provide immediately, just by integrating there, it's often the quickest bang for your buck, and we can automatically look at what are the vulnerabilities across your ecosystem, as well as how can you prioritize across all of these different vulnerabilities, and how can you remediate it. Immediately when you integrate with something like GitHub or Bitbucket, et cetera, we can also add in automatically PR checks within any of these systems. So we can look at whenever a developer opens up a new code change or a new PR, we'll look at did that PR introduce any new code issues or any new open source issues. We can also, of course, integrate within CI/CD systems, working within artifact registries, but then we can also directly integrate within your cloud environments as well, and look at we can look at your your EKS system, for example, and looking at vulnerabilities actually deployed in runtime as well. So a lot of different ways that you can integrate Snyk, starting as far left as the IDE, but going as far right as runtime environments as well. And of course, it's not just about scanning vulnerabilities, like I've said many times now. It's about understanding how can you fix these vulnerabilities, and how can you get developers on board with a DevSecOps approach. And so at the bottom here, you can see 3 other key pillars: application intelligence, security education, and security intelligence. Snyk is, of course, industry leader in terms of security research. I think the security education pillar is one that I want to highlight of the 3 here, just because I think that's also extremely valuable to teams, is the fact that when you find a vulnerability within something like VS Code, one of the text editors developers often use, or directly within our Snyk UI as well, we'll provide a link out to Snyk Learn where developers can actually understand, hey, you just wrote this SQL injection vulnerability. This education site will explain what an SQL injection vulnerability is, why it matters. It'll also provide a playground for developers to actually try to exploit this type of vulnerability themselves, and then also understand how they can remediate it in the future within the language that they're using. So really valuable resource for your teams to actually have training for your developers on vulnerabilities as well. Next slide. And so when we talk about why we're considered a dynamic duo, if you go to the next slide, there's really a couple of pieces here. One is excuse me, if you can't tell already, we're both committed to developer first application security, right? We're both baking ourselves within developer workflows and focus very much on not just providing another spreadsheet of vulnerabilities for you to figure out what to do with that spreadsheet yourself, but we want to make it easy for you to prioritize. And that's why having correlation between DAST and SAST is extremely valuable. We also understand that the modern application and the way that modern applications have been developed has changed quite significantly, and requires a reframing of how can you bake security within the processes of that application being built in the first place. So rather than understanding the security of an application after the fact, it's important to know and have the safeguard and the comfort knowing that the application was built securely in the first place. And then, of course, having that automated security testing within any of the processes that you're using is absolutely vital as well. Next slide. So that's a little bit about Snyk and StackHawk and why we are a dynamic duo. If you are heading to AWS reInvent, we are hosting a breakfast on the 30th, 7:30 a.m. to 10 a.m. So do let us know if you're going to be there, and we hope to see you there.
Thanks, Shivam. Thanks, Sam and Topher. That's pretty much a wrap on our office hours, but we still have a bit of time to take questions. I know we've been answering a few in the Q&A, but if there's any people want to pop in with, either raise your hand or type it in. Maybe we'll take one here. The custom test scripts are active scan scripts, right? Is there an option for passive scripts? I don't know if Topher or Sam, you want to take that one?
Yes, it is possible to write your own passive scripts and register them with StackHawk.
Cool. And do we have some documentation we can provide, maybe talking about how to do that? Maybe a quote.
I believe so. Let me find it.
Oh, yeah, not to put you on the spot, but yeah, we'll find some our docs on that and share those. Thanks for the question, Karthik. Topher, do you want to answer? Brian had a question kind of around like, how do we manage the scanner so that specific pages are scanned in a certain order? I think the answer there is also with custom scripts, so maybe you can expand on that really quick.
Yeah, so he had a follow-up where I answered, but yeah, basically it's custom scripts. So custom logic, if in this case, if if you can't get to pages that are further into your application, if it's not discoverable by the spider, it's not automatic, then you can write custom scripts for business logic like that. And I posted a link to our custom scripts docs.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
BizLogic had a question. I have a web application which uses multiple microservice APIs. How can StackHawk scan all of the endpoints?
I think in that case, we would consider each one a different application. So you'd want to set up a different basically run of the scanner for each one of those. That's what we do. We have our architecture is we have one sort of gateway service, but behind there is dozens, and so we have tests that we have the scanner set up to hit those plus the gateway. So we kind of have we drink a lot of our own champagne, so we
yeah, and just to add to that, one of the things about StackHawk and that sort of differentiates us from some of our competition is that we don't charge by scan hours or by number of applications or number of services. So we really encourage you to scan at that microservice level as opposed to trying to do everything through your gateway. It speeds up the scans and can eliminate some issues with things like WAFs and rate limiters that can make the scan fairly slow. So definitely how we recommend that you do your scans. Okay, Karthik's got another one. Does StackHawk Scanner find file upload vulnerabilities because Zap spiders don't parse them correctly yet?
I don't know that one offhand. Do you know that one, Sam?
Do we have a plugin check for file upload vulnerabilities? I can't say off the top of my head.
Okay, maybe we'll have to get back to you on that one offline. It's a great question.
Brian, there's one more question in the chat.
Okay. Do we have AWS virtual machines for these tools so we can run in our VPC?
So for
anybody want to take that one?
Yeah, for our scanner, we have a couple different ways you can run it. So you can download a zip file that has a CLI directly, or you can run it in Docker. We have Docker images that are out there. Most of the time people use Docker for this kind of thing. It does need to talk back to the platform to report results. So the scanner can run in your VPC, but you have to let it talk back to StackHawk so that we can, collect and aggregate the results.
Thanks, good question. Anyone else? Any other? Do we have a FedRAMP environment? I know that, and maybe Shivam, you can speak to this from the Snyk side, but StackHawk does not have currently a FedRAMP environment.
Yes, with Snyk, not currently. We are FedRAMP moderate in process, and with that, I don't know off the top of my head whether or not there will be a FedRAMP environment, but I can certainly look into that.
These are good questions.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Sounds like there's some familiarity with Zap out there, which is cool.
Okay. Well, if that's it, thanks everybody. Oh, Karthik's got another one. How do we, and maybe we'll take this one as the last question. How do you guys authenticate on applications which heavily rely on local storage, session storage, and index DB? I think the answer maybe is custom scripting.
Yep. So HawkScan has support for supplying custom Kotlin scripts that can be used to help with any kind of authentication scenario, from things like hitting multiple hosts to having values in local or session storage, or even cookies in the storage. So being able to script for your authentication scenario for your web application is totally doable with HawkScan.
Yeah, I think for that one, so we, for our own app, we use local storage and JWTs. So, you know, the real short answer is you inject a token. So you can have a custom script that can go out and grab a token, do some authentication. Ours expires, you know, every, whatever it is, 5 minutes. So as part of our thing, we have to, we have to go out and grab a token, feed that to the scanner, and then the scanner uses that. So, yeah. In the docs and the auth docs, there's a section just on that inject a token. You know.
And we also you'll see this in the docs as well, have a repository in our Kakaw org that has a bunch of different custom script examples for different auth scenarios that might be helpful. All right. Well, with that, we will see you all at AWS reInvent. Don't forget to RSVP for our recovery breakfast on Thursday, November 30th, bright and early. And if not, we'll see you the next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
See y'all.